Welcome to the first turn. I'm your host, codename Hyena, and today I am joined by Llama, where we talk about detachments and subfaction predictions for Warhammer 40k 10th edition. We also talk about the newest Warhammer Age of Sigmar Metawatch, faction standings, and what the balance changes are going to do for some of the outlying factions, and more. Enjoy. What do we haven't talked about today? We had the Metawatch.
Metawatch for AoS.
Which is funny because, again, I saw a thing that said the seventh Metawatch in a row, Cruel Boys are dead last. seven in a row. And it's sad because they launched 3rd edition with Cruel Boys.
Yep.
Right?
And a pile of new models for them.
And yet the army was just so understated.
They've never had a run.
Right. I mean, I think they're overvaluing the idea that the army can do mortal wounds. I think they're vastly overvaluing it because it's like, sure, there's a chance every single swing does a mortal wound in melee, or not even melee, just anything. But you don't have any durability to back it up. So what? So you can put a little bit of damage out, okay, but you can't take a punch at all. The normal Cruel Boys battle line, we were looking at those today, which they're one of the units that got targeted for a buff. And this is a great example of just here is this unit that is overly complicated, overcosted, underperforming. It's their core battle line, right? Which is called the Gut Rippers. Yeah. It's the guys with the angry shields and the hacker axes, the Hacka axes. These guys have 2 swings, 4s and 4s, no rend 1. Very mediocre weapon profile. I don't know if I'd want them to be better in melee than that, but they need to be less in points. Right, they're 15 points apiece for a 2-1 guy with a 5-up save. Could be better, right? Could be a little cheaper. Could have an extra special rule of some kind. Well, they did get one of their one special rule they have improved, which was before. Oh my god, the wording on it was so stupid. I have to read you this wording because it is just so ridiculous.
Read the original.
Yes, the original wording it's so funny. It freaking cracks me up. It's called, let's see, it's called something stupid.
Is it the Gut Rippers rule or the Cruel Boys rule? It's
the Gut Rippers rule. They have on their sheet. It's called Scare Tactics. So they're boogeymen, booga booga, jump out at you. Here is their rule as currently stands. At the start of the charge phase, so before charges are made, if this unit is more than 3 inches from all enemy units, so out of melee combat, you can pick one enemy unit within 12 inches of this unit, okay, 12-inch range ability, at the start of the charge phase. And that unit is not a hero or monster, so it doesn't affect heroes and monsters, and roll 2d6. Add 1 to the roll for every 5 models in this unit. If the roll is equal to or greater than the bravery characteristic of the unit you chose, subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made by that enemy unit that target this unit until the end of that turn. So here's this small benefit. The enemy unit needs to not be in combat with you, with your unit.
But within 12.
You need to exceed their bravery characteristic on a 2d6 roll. You then need to get into combat with them, so charge them. And then they need to attack you, this unit, just to get a -1 to hit. And it doesn't affect heroes or monsters.
Yep.
It's man, that is a lot of hoops just for a -1 to hit debuff.
Just for not that good.
Not even that good. And so the new rule is as follows.
Change the Scare Tactics ability to subtract 1 from hit rolls for attacks made with melee weapons by enemy units that are not heroes or monsters that target this unit.
See, how simple is that?
The end.
Right? No more rolling, no more nominating a unit, and then they got to be out of combat for it. It's no, these guys are just spooky. Their spooky shields make it so that if you target them and you're not a hero, someone heroic or something monstrous, you're a little scared of them, so you're -1 to hit them. Simple.
Yep.
That might make them worth their 15 points per model.
And, I'm gonna do it. That is one of those, simplified.
Not simple.
Yeah. Because that didn't, dumb down what they were doing before. Right. This is not only straight up better, it's just so much cleaner to read, easier to understand.
Yeah. So it's great. But that, and then their boogeyman tactics that their army gets. Their dirty tricks, they get 2 of them instead of 1 now, too. Which, the dirty tricks are pretty good. And so, getting 2 of those, plus this buff to their battle line...
I think what they want... They've been scared to do it, but what they're hoping is to get that, 3 to 4% higher win rate than what they currently have, right. They'll feel better.
Yeah.
And even then, while their target is between 45 and 55% for armies, that doesn't mean when something's at 45, they're okay with it just staying down there.
Right.
But, yeah, it was the one army that was still, and has perpetually been, in dead last.
Mm-hmm. So that might do it. I mean, that'll help, for sure. The fact that the Swamp Kalla has the ability to cast spells now while he's dishing out poison, that was the last Battlescroll update. They gave him that ability. He doesn't have to give up his spell casting to give the mortal wounds on 5-up. So, I mean, it's slowly things that are adding up. I want to see also the Hobgrots get just the ability to do mortal wounds as well. Yep. There's no reason why they shouldn't have that too. with their little nail bombs that are 8 at range, like give it to them. Like, it's not going to be broken. It'll be fine.
Yep.
You know,
because they're still dying to everything.
Right. So, I mean, we'll see. I think it's also funny that the other, 6 lowest percent armies are, all the ones I play, which cracked me up.
Slaves, that's one.
Slaves is one. Skaven's not doing great.
They were at, 48.
Stormcast aren't doing great. They were down there at 46 or 47.
And that, I wonder if it's by volume.
Seraphim aren't doing great.
Because there's always...
I'm looking at my shelf, and it's like, ooh.
Seraphim will wait until June.
Yeah. Idneth. It's down there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, all my armies are at the bottom.
But Lumineth are crushing.
Yeah. But I don't want to play the Lumineth. I know, exactly.
You know, that interesting thing with, what did you say a couple armies ago? You said Skaven, you said...
Stormcast. Lizardman.
So the Stormcast one is interesting, and I wonder if it's a by volume. And the reason I say it is because at every major event, or mid-event, there's a Stormcast in that top 4. Always makes it.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily the same list every time, because they're sheer variety, sort of. Loosely, we say variety because we know they have a lot of functional redundancy.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder if just so many people play it, and a lot of them maybe are beginners or just very casual, and they go into a tournament and go 0-3 or whatever, and that affects their stats. Because I feel like they're a better army than a 46%.
So I think there are very specific builds you can do that are just bonkers. Like going Paladin heavy deep strike list, it's like, what do you do?
Super good.
Because it's like you can end up, your entire army can start 9 inches away. They do mortal wounds when they land. It's all 3-up or 2-up save things that all do big ren, big damage, big mortal wounds, whatever. Like, I think a Paladin heavy army is one of the scariest things in the game, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yes, they're expensive, but in certain chapters, Storm Hosts, you don't need battle line because they become battle line. So you can cut out all the chaff and just do this null deploy Paladin list. They can just...
So maybe the army with the most options doesn't do well with a balanced list.
Yeah, I can see that. Because the other one is like full Dracoth list. Yeah. You just go all heavy cav.
So yeah, when they go ultra elite.
Dragon Riders and yeah.
And then we saw slaves are not doing well either, and they're brand new, so that's rough.
That just goes to show you that it's a big whiff. So a couple of the things they listed there are name character Eternus is not good enough. They lowered him.
He went down 25 points.
They also lowered just the generic Demon Prince.
Yep.
Which, my gripe about that, having recently played a Demon Prince in a tournament recently, is that the Demon Prince does nothing that a foot hero does. Like, doesn't do anything better than a foot hero.
Okay.
Like, because he's got 5 swings with his melee weapon. Okay, what else you do? That's it.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't do anything. It was almost a 200 point plus 2 wounds. That's it. He doesn't do anything more.
Right.
You know, they made all of his special rules dependent on mark, and it becomes a heroic action, which you only do 1 heroic action per turn. If they could do their heroic action in addition to other heroic actions being performed, I could see it. But the fact they turned this, I think this is a case of them wanting to capitalize on a new mechanic for an addition, namely monstrous rampages and heroic actions. That they're turning too many things into monstrous rampages and heroic actions. You know, I think it's one of those kinds of things. Because, man, he just doesn't do anything for that 195.
So they went the opposite direction they have for a lot of other things.
Yeah.
Where instead of putting everything he can do on his data sheet, they made him vanilla, and you have to waste your precious resources to buff him up.
And then when you do buff him, he doesn't do anything because he doesn't fight very well. It's only just 5 swings at 3/3 minus, I mean, with the axe, I guess, minus 2/2, which is fine. But, like, foot heroes are about that kind of level as well. So, one thing they did do is they gave him 3 weapon options: sword, axe, claws. But they didn't make it so that if you choose not to go claws, you don't get just like a couple of claw attacks.
Nope.
They took the claws away entirely. So he's just got an empty hand and like, I'm allowed to swing with this because I'm holding an axe. So, like, if he was Demon Prince stats like he was before, where if you went double claws, you were like 10 swings or something. But if you went 1 claw, you were 3 swings with the claw and then 5 with your main weapon.
Right, it was your horse attack, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
If they did that, it's like, okay, then I could see that unit being worth that 195. But as it stands, it's just like for a few swings with a weapon, it's just...
He is now a foot hero.
He doesn't do anything.
Who sometimes flies.
So they lowered him 25 points, and that's, I think, still not good enough. Like,
what about a Turnus, though? Do we think that's good enough for him? Now,
I mean...
Now, his sub-faction, I don't know if he's getting much play at all.
So, the Bellicor army is very interesting. I've played against it a couple times here recently. And it's very finessey. It did not work for my opponent, because he fell into, like, I think... a foreseeable pitfall with it, and it's all about like mark manipulation. You can like designate a unit that doesn't have a mark to gain a mark for a turn every turn.
So like the old Varangard,
a little bit
Archeon rules.
Yeah, it's a little bit like that. But what that allows you to do is enable you to like give mark buffs out to a unit that wouldn't have a mark normally, the same mark. And so like you can do some cool stuff with like Slaanesh, giving a unit Slaanesh for a turn so they can charge 3d6 with a plus 4-inch charge.
Yep. That
kind of thing. And just have this gigantic, just massive threat range. Run and charge plus 4 inches plus roll 3d6 instead of 2d6. Like, you can have this, like, 30-inch threat range. But what was funny is my opponent, because he took an undivided Demon Prince and an undivided unit, he could only give one of them the Slaanesh keyword. He couldn't give it to both of them. And so because you need a Slaanesh hero to issue the command... he gave the unit mark of Slaanesh, but then the Demon Prince was still undivided, and then he couldn't issue the order. So he was like, whoops. It's like, yeah, that's a mistake.
Well, and then they lowered Knights and Warriors a pinch, 10 points each.
Which is fine.
And then the Castle Lord and Karkadrak went down 20.
Which is also fine.
And the Theridons, which we liked, went down 20.
Yeah.
We thought Theridons were this close to being good.
There's
other monstrous infantry that kind of out-punch them.
The Chosen kind of do a lot more work.
And I'm sure Croxicles would be sexy to come
out. But it's interesting, because if you look at because we were comparing Minotaurs to the Theridons, and how they're kind of the same.
Yep.
But Theridons are now 170 for 3, and Minotaurs went up to like 210. 220. Okay. So they went up a pinch, even though the Theridons went down, even though they have basically the same stat line.
Well, the Doom Bull went up.
Yeah.
Which
he needed to. Good Lord.
Up, yeah.
Jesus. The Doom Bull being like 140 or whatever he was.
He was 160.
160 before. It was like unreal.
It was so to a Demon Prince.
Exactly. So he went up, which is good, because he was unreal for that. And then the Doom Bull, or the Bull Gores went up to 210.
Yep.
So... basically, those two units have the same stat line, but it just goes to show you the army rules themselves can carry...
make a big difference.
Yeah, can carry a unit to victory.
Yeah, Lumineth, they went up mostly. And I noticed something, though. In these armies that were, like, overperforming, like Beast, Lumineth, Tzeentch, there were upticks in points, but then clearly units that weren't getting played, they still brought down.
Yep.
So it's not like they're just take from the armies that are winning, although Tzeentch just only got increases. It's funny. I think from edition to edition in Age of Sigmar, Tzeentch has always had these runs where they're super strong. And it's like their speed, their magic, their range is just really hard to balance.
Mm-hmm.
And so even though they keep ticking them up points, and you and I will look at it and be like, oh, I just don't know if they're good. They're so expensive now. And then these Metawatches will come out. It's like, Tzeentch is still 58 to 60%. Like, it's like they still win. That just shows like the power of that And then generic BRB rules changes included the Hero Phase Command ability Rally and the Universal Artifacts of Power Arcane Tome. So Rally, you were trying to explain that that's not that big of a deal. But
So I didn't think Rally was that big of a problem, mostly because the restrictions you already have. You can't use it in combat, so if you're tied up, you don't get to rally. But when it comes to like rallying big models, I can see a problem. Things like Varangard, for example. If you were to reinforce Varangard up to 6 models, a couple of them die, and you're the Ever-Chosen subfaction, where you have a bonus to rally. Every single 5-up you roll, which is the new rule, instead of it being a 4-up, like originally was written in, every 5-up you bring back a 5-win model. That's a bit much. That's pretty nutty. Well, that's one example, but other armies have units that also rally on better numbers. And so one of their changes that they made here is to make it so that you can only rally up to 10 wounds of combined wounds of models. For the most part, it doesn't matter. If you've got a unit of 10 guys, 10 Stormcast guys, and you're rallying on 6s and you roll, half of them die and you roll 5 dice, you're not going to roll 5 6s and bring back all 5 of them. Even if you did, that's still allowed with this rule. Yeah. If you had 9 guys die and 1 guy left, what they don't want happening is you rallying, spiking like crazy, and bringing back the whole unit, right? Yep. So now they've limited to 10 wounds total. So for things like ogres, now you can only bring back 2 ogres at a time whenever you rally, no matter how many are dead.
Well, even the one hard-hidden unit in Cast, Chosen, less of them would come back.
Well, you still have to rally 4 in one go for it to matter. Because you can still rally 3 of them total. That still only adds up to 9 wounds. Yeah. But like I said, with Varangard, if you rallied 3 Varangard, 15 wounds back, that's a problem. Things like Rat Ogres would be a problem. Because you can Monstrous Infantry, yeah. Because Rat Ogres are 6 wounds each. Yep. So you ride 2 Rat Ogres back to life, that's 12 wounds back. Or Storm Fiends at 6 wounds apiece. Anything like that where it's so many wounds. Yeah. I can see why they did it. For the most part, at that number, it's not going to matter from game to game. Unless you have a strategy built around rallying giant models, it's not going to matter.
I wonder if there was something in Tzeentch Demony that was doing that too.
It could be. I know Beastmen had some banners that allowed them to rally better. And so I'm wondering if a big unit of Bestigors, for example, because they're units of 10 and they're battle line, you could have a unit of 30 of them, they're 2 wounds apiece, and they rally on a 5-up, I think.
They just lowered their points.
And so if you had something but I think that might be to compensate for that.
Okay, sure.
So, but if you had 20 of my 30 die and I roll stuff, here's a bucket of dice to rally, 20 dice. How many 5-ups you're going to get? 6 or 7? Well, they don't want you rallying 6 or 7 guys and getting 15 wounds back, or or 14 or 12 or 14 wounds back. So I get it. Toning it back is fine. Like I said, I don't think you're going to notice it in most games. Okay. But the Arcane Tome change is pretty huge because it's a threefold. Call it a threefold nerf. 1, you can't bring it on things that are already wizards. Yep, that's a big one. So a lot of people are bringing the Arcane Tome to give an additional cast to a wizard who could already cast.
So 1 more spell every turn.
Right. Well, that's a big deal. A lot of the wizards are balanced around only being cast a limited number of spells.
I didn't even know that was happening. Yeah. But I suppose when I started looking at lists, then it was every list just was Arcane Tome.
So there was that. 2, they made it so that you couldn't enable combos by having both a priest take it and become a wizard as well. Because that was another problem. Because there's a lot of prayers that are basically unbindable spells. Because they do a very similar thing. Think of Stormcast Lightning Chariot. It was a prayer that allowed you to relocate a unit. Well, if you could relocate a unit and then cast a spell afterwards, all of a sudden you are moving in range to cast a spell. Moving before you cast. Where a lot of spells are balanced around the fact that command phase happens before movement. So... And then the third one was Khorne. Khorne, who cares? That's minor.
Were there people doing that with priests?
Yeah, I think so. Just to be able to get Arcane Shield.
Doing the priest prayer to pull a unit close and then bolt them or something?
Yeah, all kinds of stuff like that.
Yeah. Or Arcane Shield, yeah.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Arcane Shield plus, brazen, or what is it? Bronze flesh.
Mystic Shield, Arcane Bolt.
There you go.
We got there.
Yeah. So like giving a unit a +2 to save by casting the prayer and the spell. But the other bigger change is when you become a wizard, you don't get to learn spells from your battle tome.
Correct.
You know the basic universal spells, and that's it. You don't get the enhancement. And I think that's great. I think it's a great change.
Yep.
It's a big deal because you take a fighter and make him a wizard. Like
it says they know Arcane Bolt, Mystic Shield, and they can attempt to summon an endless spell.
Sure, because they have the faction keyword,
which you've already paid for anyway.
Right. So it's fine. Yeah. I love that change. I love that they're willing to slap down the universal artifacts and spells and stuff for being too good. They did that with
a couple because there was an artifact last edition whose ward save was just better than anything, and so everyone took it.
Yep.
It was going back to the old Warhammer Fantasy days. It was everyone took Power Scroll or everyone took
Amulet of Destiny or Armor of Destiny. What was it? Whatever.
Yeah.
Glistening armor, what shield? I don't know, whatever it was.
So
they were generic artifacts that were just straight up better than book artifacts. They want that.
They were Reckoner Bankbusters, so there were 4 of them in every deck. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm glad they did that because that's a good change.
Yep.
The other changes we'll see. For the most part, the points changes are fine. And only things that deserved it went up, I think.
And the fact that they review this so frequently.
Yeah.
And I know because there's like gripes immediately, like, oh, I thought this would be hit harder or buffed better. And it's like, well, but they do these reviews so frequently now.
Yep.
And the people they get to talk about it are these people who go to these things. And
I was thinking about it with Grotz. The Loon King faction leader was only 160 when he first came out. And I was like, that's busted.
He's now 210.
He's now 210.
Yeah.
That's a 50 point. That's almost a 30% increase in his cost. It's like, because when I saw that at 160, I'm like, that's busted. For the amount he does, that's busted.
Right away and came into the store.
Yeah, I opened that book and I was like, nope, busted.
And you're like, Loon King is nuts. And everybody's like, really? It's like, yes.
And he's 2 cannons because he shoots that good, or it was something weird. Oh no, he now creates the Aura of the Moon, which is insane. Yeah, for 160.
So I'm guessing he was appearing in most of their lists. Yeah. Now they'll have to think about it.
Yeah.
And some of their squigs, which were kind of populated high, went up.
Yeah, but not enough.
They also had a unit go down.
Not enough for it to disqualify.
They had the Loon Boss on the Mangler squig went down,
which he was almost 400 initially, and it was like. Not worth it.
Which would be great if he starts getting play because, for one, so many people paint that model to a ridiculous standard.
Well, because they flipped up his damage chart, which is the biggest issue with him, and he only has its best stats when he's at like 1 wound left. It's like you're never at 1 wound. No. That's so bad.
You're either at
full or you're dead. That's it.
Full and you're never at 1. You're at like 4 and then dead. Yeah.
And so like. They overvalued the fact that his 1 or 2 wounds left, bracket was so good. But it's like you never get there. You never get to fight when you're at 1 wound left. So they needed to lower him. They lowered him quite a bit too.
Good.
So I'm excited to see what happens with that. I think they're all good changes.
Now
almost like quarterly, I think.
I think
at the very least they do the Metawatches every month, but I think they do a battle sheet like every 3 months.
But it'll be interesting to see at the very next Metawatch.
Yeah.
I don't know what tournaments are coming, but I'm sure they play them at Warhammer Fest.
Oh, yeah. That'll be here in a few weeks.
And we have also their first U.S. Open happening late spring in Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
And they've already talked about they're going to allow people to... The event will still be 9th Ed, but there's going to be... Playtesting for 10th there.
Which makes you wonder how close to 10th Ed release is... June or July, whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like how soon is it? I don't know. Because it could be something where it's like, try it out 3 months in advance. Or it could be like, try it out. The book releases this weekend.
Yeah, the next US Open.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, I was thinking, did they specifically say that it won't be out by then?
I don't know.
Because it's like, it could be that it is out by then.
Maybe that's the release weekend.
And so it's like, come play test it after it's released. Like it could 100% have been like very close to that.
I feel like they won't make people show up with 10th Ed legal list to that.
Right.
Unless they give us those rules like tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a big ask. I already think that's going to be tough for the tournament schedule in general because they've got 3 U.S. Opens plus their championship planned for this year, right? And so you're going to have to get 10th Ed rules out and get all those tournaments on that.
When's the right time to release it is the question. Because you're right, because people need to actually have a chance to play it and learn the rules.
And so again, I'm going to compare to like Magic the Gathering. Now, there is one thing they do that's a little unique, and every Pro Tour event is based around a new set's release. So the next Pro Tour event is in May in Minneapolis, and it's called Pro Tour March of the Machine. It's based on the new set, which comes out here in a couple of weeks. Pre-release starts next weekend. But they like the Pro Tour to be a format with a new set when it's standard constructed. So there is precedent for that, but I think getting people ready with cards is maybe a little easier than getting people ready with models, especially when there's that many armies.
I mean, the comparison would be if you got the cards and they were blank, and then you had to go and you had to draw the card with paint to get the card ready to be played.
Yep.
You know, like that would be like the comparison. It's like the cards are ready to go right out of the pack.
Yeah.
You just got to collect the right ones.
Yeah, and and they kind of like that there's some newness to the format. So like people have to figure out as they're going that first time the format's changed. But Warhammer, you kind of need the format has to be kind of solved before you run an event.
Right.
I mean, otherwise, people won't have the models because their indexes could drop or whatever they're doing, and all of a sudden you have 500 people that were going to be at an event, and now they...
And can we talk about the indexes for a second?
Okay.
So I know there are a lot of concerns that for things like Space Marines is the best example of it, where your army is broken up into, or like your book is going to be broken up into lots of subfactions because there's a lot of different Space Marines and they play different ways. Can we just address the fact that they are, I guarantee it, going to have chapters again for Space Marines in the very near future?
Does someone think they won't?
A lot of people do not. A lot of people think, when the new Space Marine book that comes out, you're going to have a book that's Space Marines. It doesn't matter what color they are just Space Marines.
But that's not based on anything. Right?
No, absolutely not. I think the assumption is that because they said the subfactions are going away initially when the index comes out, that they're never going to introduce subfactions again.
You know what?
It's like, are you fucking kidding me?
You know what though? Didn't we hear that also when GW is going to partner with?
ITCs. They're going to take over ITCs.
They're going to take over, and they're going to come and resin check your models, and they're going
to break your models in half to make sure they're not resin.
By the way, 0 of that's happened, and that's been over a year.
Yeah.
And we also heard it with Golden Demon, because Warhammer Fest was a UK specific event in their headquarters. They charged people to attend like it was a convention there. So they were saying, well, does that mean Golden Demon Adepticon is going to have its own separate entry fee? It's like, no, because you're already paying to be an Adepticon, and Adepticon decides if there are any entry fees for their things. And they said, you buy your Adepticon badge.
Yeah, how much did you pay for Golden Demon this year at Adepticon?
Nothing.
Okay.
Yeah, came with my badge, it turns out.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
Yeah, you do have to buy an Adepticon badge to compete in a competition.
Sure.
But then you get to compete in all of them.
Yeah.
So, but it'd be one thing if this pattern we see, because it is a pattern of the naysayers, were the doom and gloomers, were saying like, well, we're just expecting the best or expecting the worst. That way, when something better happens, we're happy. But they're not pleased either. They just go to expecting the worst for the next thing.
But here's the other thing: is it's unfounded. Time and time again, they're proven wrong.
Yep.
And nothing really negative happens.
Nope.
But the next time something new rolls around, it's assuming worst again. It's like, why do you keep assuming worst? Yeah. There has been no bad.
And there are endless plates of crow that are coming out to tables, and the people just aren't sitting there anymore, like to eat them.
Yeah.
They move on to the next thing.
Yeah, it's insane. Just the fact that it's like, I'll wait to see before I make a judgment. It's like, we've got actual information already.
Correct.
You can make some judgment already if you wanted to.
And you and I even were trying to impress upon some people we talked to, like being at the event, the preview event at Adepticon was different than the online show, obviously. But it was like, they weren't given these, like, when they gave the safe, avoid answering a question answers, it was for stuff that it could be those guys didn't know anything about.
They were pretty upfront about when they didn't know, though.
Yeah,
like they were pretty explicit. It's like, we don't know of anything in the future. We have no information at this time.
On the design studios, inspiration.
Yeah, they told us when we said we don't know.
But when they were talking about things like 10th edition, they were saying very emphatically, like, we are aware of things like codex creep. Yeah. We are aware of these types of issues. And
special rule stacking.
Of special rule stacking, of stratagem overload. And like, they were so upfront about that and how that stuff was addressed. And people applauded. When we were there, the vibe in the room was mostly positive. Yeah. The internet chatter is obviously always going to be the internet chatter. But it was frustrating. This is maybe the most like gears grinding version of a show we've done here. But like, it's frustrating to read that, not because we're like white knights for them or anything. It's just, it's baseless, it's foundless. And then when they are proven incorrect, they don't like learn from that.
No, like, oh, I was wrong. It's like, whatever. Just wait for them to mess up next time.
Yep.
So,
and there was a long history of them doing that. Yeah. Games Workshop in particular.
Yeah.
Or now Privateer. Like, they're tripping one over the other. But like, I think enough time's now gone by where we're like, okay, well, they're always trying to at least make this better.
Yeah.
And I don't play much, as we know. I mostly paint with my time. You get to do some of both.
Mm-hmm.
But you're always reading the rules.
Yeah.
And when we came away from that, it was like, they addressed things so specifically. And then even with the first teasers of these data cards they've given us, of the Termagant, the Primaris Intercessors, and the Terminators, it's like, I think they're holding up to what they teased already. We saw that, like, okay, this unit, like Terminators, get their special rule back. Or they get a special thing where they can use their little...
teleport hammer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like, that's so far so good. And even though Index always looks vanilla compared to what we'll get...
And it will be. And it will be vanilla compared to what we get. Yep. Because they're baselining everything. Mm-hmm. They're wiping everything prior so that we don't have issues of, like, 7th ed rules being imported over and trying to translate into the new edition, and it's just not working.
From 2.5 years ago being folded in. Yeah.
So it's that kind of thing. It's like, yes, it will be vanilla at first. When you go and play a Space Marine army, at first, you will play Space Marines. You don't get a chapter. But as soon as the first book comes out, we know it's going to be Space Marines.
Right,
chapters are going to be in there. And what are they going to do? Like they said, you'll have a data sheet for playing Space Marines. These are the rules you get for being a Space Marine Space Marine army. Well, it's like, well, I want to play White Scars, or I want to play Raven Guard instead. What happens? Get rid of that sheet for Space Marines. Here's your Raven Guard sheet.
Yep.
And what is it? It might have 3 or 4, or 50% of the sheet might be the same as Space Marines. But it's not saying, add these rules to the Space Marines sheet in order to play your new chapter. It's like, no, get rid of whatever is in the other one. Now you have this one to play with, and everything you get is right here. And no more, no less.
And you know what? I can understand if it's hard for some people to wrap their mind around that, because as people who combined, we have 50 years in this hobby, I don't think they've ever approached their 40k rules this way.
Right. It's always been add this, add this, add this. You get this, extra.
Yep.
Yeah. And new supplement, add this to it.
And that's why there ends up the bloat midway through every edition, and then the last half of the edition is always people like...
Well, it's like, the bloat ends up being you need 4 publications because all of them add on to the initial codex.
Yeah.
You have your White Dwarf that adds a thing. You have your campaign supplement that adds a thing. You have your specific chapter supplement that adds a thing onto the normal basic one.
Yep.
Well, they said, no, we're not doing that anymore. Anytime a new thing comes out, it replaces the previous.
Yep.
It replaces the old stuff, and you use a new sheet. That's it.
Yeah.
You need 1 page to play your army. For your special rules.
Yeah, they said 1 page will be front back for your army, and then they'll make the cards for the units.
Now, that part I'm fine with. But it still has the possibility of codex creep.
Sure.
Which I don't think it's eliminated.
Right.
Because it's just you end up having different book design mentalities.
Yep.
Right? It's like it happens with Magic. Like Magic's a really good example of it because again, it's a 30-year-old evolving thing. Think about, a 1 mana card that does, or a 2 mana card that does a thing from 20 years ago in Magic, compared to a 2 mana card that does a thing now.
Yeah.
It's just like, you have a 2 mana card, what would that be 20 years ago? You have a 2/2.
Yep.
No rules.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's a 2 mana card. Now in Magic, a 2 mana, to be a good...
has 9 lines of text on it.
Right. It comes in, it's got flash, it's got haste, it counters a spell. It makes the
draws a card.
It's got hexproof on the turn it comes in, and it's a 3/2. Yeah. So it's just straight up better and does way more. So I mean that's the kind of thing we're talking about. That is the codex creep that we can see still happening.
Right.
If Space Marines comes out and you get the first couple chapters of Space Marines, but then Dark Angels gets their supplement that replaces the previous thing, and it's just a different chapter, but better in every single way, then it's like, okay, well, that's creep. You know what I mean? Your special rules are better than my special rules,
suddenly just have...
even though the special rules are supposed to be equivalent in power level.
Right.
Yours are just better than mine. I mean, it's Dark Angels right now. I mean, the fact that their chapter gets Inner Circle, they get, like, re-rolling some crazy shit with plasma.
Yeah.
You know, they don't get hot.
Whereas plasma's bad in every other army.
Like, it's so many things that Dark Angels get on top of just being a Space Marine that it just makes them the best chapter. Mm-hmm. Right? What did Raven Guard get? Right? I always bring it back to that because it's such dog shit. Mm-hmm. You count as being in cover outside of 18 inches for shooting? Woo. That's awful. That is so bad.
Yep.
No, it's like, I could fix that in like 5 seconds. Yep. You know, like, why haven't they? It's awful.
Yeah.
And,
and so we've heard people who are just like going to be skeptical no matter what they see.
Yeah.
They're not even trusting when Games Workshop themselves are showing us rules or flat out saying things. I'm going to be skeptical about that very thing.
Right.
They claim like what they want to try to do, and it'll never be perfect. You can never have every army at 51% when you have 24 of them plus variants. But what they want to try to do for each army is simply have them operate within the core rules of the game slightly differently than each other army. Mm-hmm. That's going to be one where let's see if they can do it. Where I'm skeptical, because what they've historically done forever is when a new army comes out, they give them rules that either we've never seen before or that break the rules of the game that everyone else has to follow. Mm-hmm. And so you have a time where some army comes out and it's just the hotness, where every Space Marine player is red Dark Angels, white Dark Angels, gray Dark Angels, whatever.
Right. I'm also skeptical because ultimately they still need to sell models.
They do.
Right.
Yep.
That's how you make money.
Yep.
And if more of these rules are becoming digital and free, they need to push model sales.
Yep.
I mean, they need to make money. They're a company.
Yep.
You know? But what that means is they need a driving factor, right? And that driving factor is new things that come out are good, right? That's, long and short of it. They need to make the things that they're making now, that are coming out now, good and make people want to buy them.
Yeah.
They'll tone them back and fix them later and balance them later, but they need to come out a little bit better than everything else, just so people buy those things.
Or even models that aren't that old, but maybe haven't moved well.
Yeah.
They all of a sudden give them a great start in the new edition.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, they did that with a couple of things. I mean, I think Sigmar is a good example of that. There's a box set that came out for Stormcast Eternals that had a lot of the new Thunderstrike stuff. Well, what happened like 3 days before that box was announced? Every single one of the units in that box got a point decrease. All of them. Literally, that box set got like a 25% point decrease. And then this box comes out and it's like, oh, those units they're all pretty good now. Maybe I want to get this box. That makes people buy those models because they're now good in the game, It is what it is, but making things all about the same good, I feel like accomplishes a very similar thing. If you want to play the game, now you can literally buy anything you want.
Well, and you know what? There are a lot of people we meet. Now, when people are new into a game, we should disclaimer, and that's any game, they usually pick a loyalty to one thing and stay that one thing. I'm a this player. Mm-hmm. But there are some of us who've been in it so long or are just adults with jobs or whatever, and we see cool models come out that belong to an army that we've never considered before, and it's tempting to just start that army.
Yeah.
It's possible if two things happen. One, they make easier ways to get into it, to the army, which they kind of try to do with some of these box sets. Mm-hmm. You usually get like a unit for free in terms of the price. Or you make way more units on a similar power level.
Right.
Because then if you switch armies, you switch your army sheet or codex, like you've still got the same chance if you give it a real go.
Because you know what? If I had completely different sets of models I had to play in order to play two different armies in the same faction, I would collect both of those full armies.
Yep.
Like, if Space Marine comes out and there's a way to play with any chapter, and there's bonuses and whatever, to play all Terminators, I would collect all Terminators and do it.
Yeah.
If there was a way to do it with just Phobos Marines and nothing else...
Or just Gravis.
I would do that.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's like, I would buy these full armies of just that one type of unit in order to build that army.
It also gives you as the player, like, you're never that bored because you're like, well, I'm tired of playing this Phobos list.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to try this Terminator one.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to try this vehicle heavy one. And all of a sudden you've got a fun way to keep yourself refreshed. So I think you're right. I think they're going to try to do that, which is good, but it also might mean everyone's having to spend a lot more money.
Could be. Or, maybe not. Maybe it ends up being you only need a couple things to complete your collection to add to your collection to make an army work. The meta chasers and the people who go for tournaments, I think they're gonna have to buy a lot more models now.
Yeah.
Because I don't think there's going to be cherry pick the best things from the codex, put them in one army and win. I think it's going to be. I think what they're going to do is they're going to make armies much more specialized, much more unitask almost. So it's not like choose all the best stuff from the entire army and play it. I think it's going to be very focused special rules that the subfaction data sheets give, because they were talking about doing even for like different squads within a chapter getting special rules. Like there was a first company chapter or first company army that they were talking about. So, well, if you don't know anything about Space Marines, that doesn't make any sense to you. But the first company is specifically the Terminators within a chapter.
Yep.
And so it's like that's a whole army on its own that gets its own special rule sheet of just Terminators. Well, every chapter has a first company, and I'm pretty sure, according to the Codex Astartes, they're all supposed to have a first chapter of veterans that wear Terminator armor, right? They're like the ancients, the elites, right, that kind of thing. And so, like, the fact that they referenced that specifically, it's like, well, that brings to mind an entire unique way of playing that doesn't incorporate scouts and tactical marines and stuff like that.
And obviously they got a brand new shiny kit of Terminators coming out, which people would have bought anyway.
Oh yeah. I'm going to actually bust out my Beetleback Tartarus Terminators.
Yep.
Because I love those models.
Speaking of which, I saw the new Terminators have two shoulder poses.
Okay.
They've got a higher up one and a lower one on the same frame.
Interesting.
So I wonder if that's just they'll have two holes in the arm or something, and you pick which one you want.
Huh.
But
sweet.
Or people are already just planning to mod it, and they did some really clever photoshopping. But no, I could see that, like giving each army multiple of these sheets, of special rules as a way to play them. I guess that wouldn't be too different.
I mean, some would be easy, right?
Yeah.
It'd be super easy to do it with Space Wolves. Here's your your Marines and your Wolfen on foot. Your Long Fangs, your Sky Claws, whatever. And then here's your Thunderwolf Cavalry army. Easy to do. Or hell, even Dark Angels again. Here's your Green Marines, here's your Bone Marines, here's your Black Marines.
Yep.
Here's your three separate armies within an army. Pick one. Ravenwing, Deathwing.
Do you think they'll still have a general?
I don't know. Maybe. Yeah, I think so. I think every army's going to have something like that. Then they'll have a specialized one for their own chapter. I think it will.
I wonder if, and I don't think we're there yet, but I wonder if I would even be fine with if they'd release a pack of these data slates for each army instead of a book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Because I know when they tried to go just rules pamphlet back in 3rd ed, it was actually the players who complained. They wanted their big fluff and their color galleries and whatever. And so in 3.5, they immediately went back to printing fat codexes. And yet now we're at a spot where people are like $55 for a codex.
$55 for a supplement to a codex.
Whose rules in 2 weeks are going to get FAQ'd and errated. And then the points are going to change at the next chapter approved. And so we've talked about that, how they could leave the points out of those. I could see if they still wanted to do a book of galleries and rules and fluff for an army, but you could make that optional. Yeah. You really could just release the pack of cards on how to play the army. Now, I expect they'll release them alongside a book that you have to buy, so it'll still be $1 million. But they did talk at the Q&A about the app and having that be more integrated into... Which
I've always liked the app. I've had no problems with the app.
Nope.
The first 4 days that it was out, it had a problem.
Yep.
And people were clinging to that.
They clung to that for 2 years.
I have no problem with the app. Yep. I have had no issues validating anything. I've had no issues with my units or points being wrong or like nothing. I'm fine with the app.
Right.
And the fact that I'm signing up for Warhammer Plus anyway because occasionally they come out with shows.
Yep.
And they give you a free model with the subscription for a year that pays for the subscription.
Yep. And
then you get both like list builders for free, basically. It's like, why not?
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yep. And I also have liked the app. I know there were times when like adding war gear to a thing was, but people will cling to these moments where there's a bug and they just act like that's the app through and through. And they reach for the top shelf, right? They need to be fired, etc. Mm-hmm. But you're right. I've had no problems with the app. I've enjoyed it further than the alternative that existed before.
Yeah.
And it's official is the other thing.
So you feel a little less icky.
Yeah.
Also, you're not waiting on someone doing the work manually after a book drops, going through and collating all the information and updating their info pack for their, battle scribe.
Which feels like a torrent file almost.
I know.
But yeah, and it could be they're going to implement that more with these new ways to do it.
Sure.
And that'd be fine. I'm actually excited for a new edition.
Yeah, me too.
But it has also made it so there's like no reason to play the current one.
That's always the problem, right?
It's
like we had a buddy whose two armies that just got updated. He plays literally World Eaters and Astra Militarum. And they were the last two books.
Yeah.
He hasn't played in a long time. He just bought the books. Hasn't played with the books. Probably won't play until the end of 10th. Or to the end of 10th. Probably won't play any of 10th. Mm-hmm. But the fact that he bought the two books and now they're being invalidated as soon as 10th comes out had him a little burnt. But it's like, well, what's the difference? You're not going to play anyway. That was my initial thought. It was like, you're not going to play anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But it's like, the books are still cool. And you know what? You've got like 6 months to play the game if you wanted to, using the current rules.
Yep.
But that's the thing, right? You think about when fantasy was killed by Games Workshop.
Right.
They didn't come and collect all the 8th edition rule books for fantasy.
Right. Put them through a shredder.
Yeah. Right? Like, they didn't say, oh, these are no longer... You will come and arrest you if you use these. These are copyrighted.
Just like we're going to break your models.
It's like, no. Just keep playing 8th. It's not going to be continued going forward. I mean, I've done that kind of thing before. Yep. Game is longer... They announce it will no longer be supported. I'm like, all right, well, I guess the game is dead, and I stop playing it.
Yep.
I've done that before.
Yep.
But you don't need to.
No.
You can keep playing. You can even... 9th edition is still valid. Yep. Up until 10th edition comes out. Yep. You can still keep playing.
Which is any time between now and whenever. September?
Yeah. At the very least. At the very latest, probably.
Yeah.
But we think early summer. So that seems to be when they do it often.
I think
right?
I think you'll get Seraphim, New General's Handbook, and I think then they'll do 10th. Okay. Is probably how it'll go. Because they usually give us your 40k or Age of Sigmar like rules update around then, right? Because then chapter approved is always like around Christmassy.
Yeah.
So
you're right. Seraphim's going to be a big model release because they're coming out with a lot.
And that's at the very least in June,
right?
We think.
But 10th edition is going to come with a lot of models too.
Oh yeah.
There's going to be a box set of Space Marines versus Tyranids.
Yeah.
We know that.
And they'll make 4 versions of that box set, right?
Yeah.
Small one, big one.
Maybe they won't this year.
Special one.
I hope they don't, because it was kind of a waste when they did that for the Indomitus box set.
So what do you think would have been a better approach? Just a super big one?
Just like the normal middle-sized one, because they did it for Sigmar as well. Remember when they had like the Stormcast versus the Crow Boys, and there was 4 different sizes, and it's like, well, they're all just different versions of the normal one. I don't want any of those. Just give me the normal one.
Yep.
I think it would just been a normal one. Normal, like $225 box. The 10 units that come in it, whatever. Yeah. Just leave it there.
We know it won't be balanced.
No.
So
it
can't. It'll be Gaunts versus
Terminators. So we know new Terminators are coming out. We know there's at least 2 new characters coming out for Space Marines. Mm-hmm. The Terminator Librarian and the Phobos Lieutenant, the new one with the
Mr. Knife.
The tyrannical war vet.
Yeah.
Phobos Lieutenant. But what else? Did we see anything else? Oh, there's a new Dreadnought, a new Rifleman Dreadnought.
Right.
But we didn't see another infantry unit, did we? I don't think we did.
I don't think so.
Well, actually, I take that back. There was a normal intercessor type guy with a Primaris flamethrower.
That's right.
So I wonder if we're going to get a flamethrower unit called Flaminators or something.
Flame Executioners.
Flame Executioners, done.
Nope.
Yeah. So we could see that.
That could be. It could be a special weapons unit, like 4 or 5 guys with that. It could be. They're going to let the intercessor squad feel like a more traditional tactical squad, where you get one guy with a weapon in there.
That could be cool.
That'd be all right.
But that sounds like a box set to me.
Yep.
Right? You got a Terminator, you got a couple characters, or you got a Terminator unit, maybe 10 of them. Oh, that'd be a lot. Maybe 5. Maybe 5.
They'll give you both characters.
They'll give you both characters and a dreadnought. That's your side, right? Like 10 infantry, 2 characters and a dreadnought. And then Tyranid side, we're going to have probably 2 units of Gaunts. Let's be honest. 2 units of 10 Gaunts.
Do we think they're doing new Harma Gaunts too?
I hope so. They have
those
to.
Look awful.
They have to, right?
I hope so.
We know Rippers are probably going to still come in that box with the Gaunts. So they're going to have new sculpts for Rippers, I bet.
They said that on Warcom. Yep.
But I think there's way more being released for Tyranids that are going to fit in a starter box.
Probably.
I think we're going to see that. We're going to see probably maybe the Shrike kit included. We'll see the new Prime that is either winged or not. Mm-hmm. Will probably come in that box. And then something like Biovore. Or maybe the weird... There was rumored that there's a weird like tentacle-headed monster. Oh, yeah. A new one. Yep. That's kind of
Which was like feeding on something in the video.
Yeah. So that one...
We didn't get a really good look at it.
So it's like... That would be a decent thing, right? Like one big monster, a character... 1 unit of elite, and then 2 infantry.
And you know what I think? Side note, what I think is interesting about that potential medium-sized tentacle feeder thing is that it's now the go-between, because you have like Gene Stealers and Lictors, which are these slightly smaller feeders and rippers, and then you have great big bubblegum monster, but there was like no
in between
and so maybe that's kind of what that is.
Well, I'm also hoping that Gene Stealers get kicked out of the Codex.
I would be fine with it.
I really do.
Yep.
Gene Stealer, Patriarch.
Well, they didn't have that. They had the Broodlord.
But it's the same thing. Let's be honest. Broodlord's a Patriarch. No. Like, come on. But I hope Gene Stealers get kicked out and go to their own faction. And if you want to bring Gene Stealers, you have to ally in some Gene Stealer cult.
And there'll be a rule for doing that, yeah.
Like Brood Brothers, whatever. That's where I hope that goes. So it's not crossover between the two armies.
You know what's funny is since I've played Tyranids since their beginning, collected, and
it's got to be collected because you didn't play when you didn't paint them.
Nope. My second Ed Tyranid army was fully painted.
Okay.
And then sold. And then I bought all in 3rd and 4th, and then sold. And then I bought all again, still have it. But there will be people who will be like, oh, we've always used Gene Stealers in the Tyranid army. It's like, you're right. But now they're going to have enough stuff on their own.
Right.
And they're always polarizing. They're always either the only infantry in the book worth taking, or they're too expensive. And you need to, make that Gene Stealers then. Make that their thing.
Yeah.
And then when the Gene Stealers come around to getting their release, make a new kit. Yeah. Maybe that's the what you do.
I mean, why not make Gaunts that?
Yep.
Gaunts are still supposed to be horrifying. They've never been on the tabletop.
They're like the size of... They're like in between a large dog and a horse.
Yeah. That's still horrifying. Yep. You don't need it to be human DNA for it to have 5 attacks.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's just it. It would just take a simple...
Stat increase.
Stat change to their new unit. And
make Hormagaunts bigger than Termagants. Termagants are the little shooty ones that are swarming and and then make Hormagaunts big and scary.
Or make Tyranid warriors your expensive elite shock troops. Make Raveners cheap and they're just melee.
Sure. Any of that. Any of those.
Yep.
Oh, and by the way, we have all of those. By the way, that can replace the Gene Stealers. Yep. You have warriors, Shrikes now, and you've got Raveners. You don't need Gene Stealers anymore.
You do a points tweak here, a stat change there, and you've got Gene Stealers covered. Yeah. And it would be fine, because they were always supposed to be the go-ahead of the Tyranids anyway. Mm-hmm. And then, like I said, then if they're working on a new basic Stealer kit, when they come around, you can make them.
Yeah.
And I say that as someone... We've been on that kick, though, about the ripping the Band-Aid. And that'd be one I'd be totally fine with.
Well, I did hear a rumor that things in the new Space Marine book... Now, I'm not sure, because you don't know how reliable anything is. Yep. Right? You don't know. But we had seen 2 things. We saw a data sheet for intercessors, which I cannot... I'm becoming more and more skeptical of it, because it looked like the new sheet, but there were typos on it. There were things that just didn't make any sense on it.
Sure.
I think someone whipped it up on their own, and it was fraudulent. Because here's what leads me to believe that. Terminator unit, we were shown.
Yep.
The card.
By Games Workshop, yeah.
It didn't have anything saying, oh, you have a sergeant in this squad. Improve your leadership. The Intercessor one that I saw did. It said improve your leadership by 1. if the sergeant of this unit is alive. But it made their leadership go up or bravery, whatever, go up from 7 to 8.
Which is actually worse.
Which is worse in the new edition. Yeah. So it's like, I don't know. That's fishy.
Yeah.
They had a thing called transhuman on their data sheet that made it so that you just ignore the first wound you suffer every phase. Well, the Terminators don't have anything like that.
Right.
So there was just there was too many things. I'm not to say that, if the Terminators don't have the special rule, then the Intercessors definitely will, because the Intercessors are Primaris.
Right.
But transhuman was a special rule that I think you could only use in Primaris Marines as a stratagem. And so if Terminators aren't exclusively Primaris, maybe they don't have transhuman, whatever, maybe. Yep. I could make excuses for it, but it's the more and more I think about it, I'm like, I don't know.
Might not have been legit, right.
So I'm not sure about that one at all. But then we also saw that the book itself for Space Marines was leaked, and they were doing something interesting, which was omitting the word Primaris from all of the data sheets.
Okay.
They were just called Intercessors.
Yeah.
They were called Eradicators. They weren't Primaris Intercessors.
Good.
They weren't Primaris Assault Intercessors. They weren't things like that. So it's I wonder if they are going to be doing the thing where they're saying, these are just Intercessors now.
Yeah.
They're not Tactical Marines anymore. The Tactical Marine data sheet is gone. If you want to play an old Tactical Marine with a bolter, which it sounds like the bolter is... The Intercessor bolt gun is now just the same stats as the old bolt gun. 4-0-1.
Yep.
Oh, that's so bad.
Well, we don't know what that looks like in the new edition.
Right. It feels bad, considering that a Terminator is a 2-up, 4-up.
Yep.
A no-rend gun, and tough 5, by the way.
Yep.
That feels very bad of a gun. But we don't know if you're a Space Marine, you improve all weapons by 1 rend for being a Space Marine wielding a bolter. It could be something like that. Who knows? Whatever. But the fact they were omitting those Primaris words from the data sheets means that it's maybe that's Band-Aid rip time. Maybe it is just Marines are Marines now. Are you a Marine with a bolt gun? You can be an Intercessor. Well, are you a Marine with a flamer? You're now a Flaminator.
That might have been, you're now a Flaminator. And that might have been what they were hinting at when they were showing us the new Terminators at the event, when they said these are not Primaris Terminators, these are not old Terminators, they're just Terminators. Any Marine now can fit in this suit because we made it bigger.
Right.
And so they can do the same with Marines by just saying, by now these chapters are all either moved on or they're all mixed. Yep. So whichever ones you play, they are Intercessors, they are Interceptors, they are whatever they're called.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
Hellblasters, yeah.
Could be cool. I like that.
Fine.
Yeah.
Also less confusing, fewer words.
Yep.
Fine.
So I'm all on board for that if that's the case. But I'm hoping that means that they're also creating clear-cut roles for the different units, different weapons, different whatevers.
Yep.
I think they are, because again, some of the special rules we saw, certain weapons were good against vehicles, and they wounded on a certain number, no matter what the toughness was.
Yep.
Chain Fist now always wounds a vehicle on a 3-up. That's pretty huge.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big deal. Because it's normally before it was I'm strength 4, doubled up to strength 8. I only wound this 9 on a 4, or the strength tough 9 thing on a 5. Now it's just no, Chain Fist, always a 3.
Yep.
Cool. Well, I don't expect that there are going to be... that's going to be the only gun or weapon that does that.
No.
Right? I'm pretty sure that makes room for sniper weapons now to wound on a certain number no matter what. They talked about keywords inside of the weapon profiles that they didn't define yet.
Right.
Of grievous wounds and devastating wounds, stuff like that they just didn't tell us what they were.
And we've seen other games with similar stuff.
Yeah.
And my thing is the few data sheets we have seen show what we suspect is a scaling back of the AP and the damage.
Yeah.
Which hurts at first because we got so used to 8th was we saw it climb, and then 9th it
was just
the moon.
9th was the most lethal edition.
Yeah. So lethal, and even when they did things to make the first turn slightly less devastating-ish, it was still so killy.
Yeah.
And killing stuff is fun, but it's not fun when you don't get to play your thing because it's always dead immediately. Or
you don't even get to bring it because it's going to die immediately.
Every army has exactly the thing.
Yeah.
So if they're going to do role-specific stuff, that, first of all, eliminates the redundancy of, well, I'm going to take 6 different units that can all do this thing from this far away.
Right.
Now you don't get to. Now it's like, well, if I want to kill that enemy Lehman Russ, I know I have to bring units packing this thing.
Right.
But you can't, it's not as spammable because the rule of 3 is going to apply.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with it. And we always knew the damage and AP needed to roll back, but we also knew they weren't going to do that in the middle of an edition.
Right.
So this is the time to do it.
Yep. I did see, I think it was the assault cannon had some kind of rule like that, devastating wounds or something like that. Something like that. And it's like...
Turn someone into pulp.
What does that even mean? Well, like, they didn't define it. They said, we'll define it later. But, like, I was thinking about it. It's like, what do I think it means? Well, in previous editions, they had keywords on weapons and keywords on units, whatever. Universal special rules, which all that really means is this is a special rule with this one keyword that you can find across all armies.
Yep.
You can. Armies don't have every single one,
right.
But any army could have these keywords. Yep. They're not faction-specific ones, and we'll define them here in the rulebook.
And stuff like War Machine, wasn't it stuff like tough?
Yes,
or
that kind
like
of thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. One of them, though, was rending.
Yep.
Rending meant if you rolled a 6 to wound, it was increased AP on the weapon. Well, it was really good in that edition when they had USRs because the way that saves worked were all or nothings.
Yep.
It wasn't like improve your rend by 2. It was like, no, you ignore any save that is a 2+ or worse.
Yep.
It's like, fool. So nothing in the game gets a save unless you have an invulnerable save.
Right.
So I'm wondering if devastating wounds, whatever the thing was, is something like that. Where devastating wounds is a new keyword that we're going to see that says 6 to wound, you don't get an armor save because it like critical hits you and it punches through your armor. Or if it's something like 6 to wound or just a mortal wound or something like that. Because I don't think mortal wounds are going away. I really don't.
Yeah,
mortal wound as a I don't know what you want to even call it, like a game term or like a function in the game is pretty standard, right? Yep. Like we've had it. Even back in like 5th edition, I want to say, when Grey Knight power weapons were like, no saves allowed versus this weapon, they were doing mortal wounds.
Yep.
What we would know as mortal wounds now, right? People have theorized that, well, with psychic phases going away and psychic powers now don't just do mortal wounds, I guess mortal wounds are going away. It's like, they don't need to at all.
No.
A psychic weapon that you use in the shooting phase instead of the psychic phase could still just do mortal wounds.
Yep.
Like, what's stopping that from happening?
Nope.
Oh, you hit with this weapon? Take this many mortal wounds then.
I'd be interested to... I should have asked them why they made that decision. And the reason I say that is because they went a few editions where psychic powers were just abilities that certain units could use in certain phases.
Right.
Whether it was like, in the shooting phase, you get a bolt of some kind that does a thing, or in the combat phase, you give a buff to a unit. And then they went back to giving us a psychic phase again.
Right.
Now they decided we didn't like it.
I don't like phases. Okay. I don't know if I like the phases. Including in Sigmar. I don't know if I like the phases.
Like the hero phase.
Yeah, like it feels like they're breaking out from the hero phase anyway by saying, well, what do you do in the hero phase? A heroic action, sure. But the monsters rampages happen in a different phase. All of your command abilities now, you don't like throw them out as buffs in the hero phase. Now they happen in the phase that they're being used for the most part. There are so few hero phase command abilities now that it's like. So the only thing we do now is magic.
So maybe we don't like. Maybe and they might have gotten that feedback somewhere.
Yeah.
And it also could just be their R&D group didn't like it, but it could be they didn't like that. Start of the turn, put up all my powers.
Yeah.
Go.
Well, in 40k, you move first, and then you put up all your powers.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but in that system, it's a little bit better, because it's basically psychic phases, beginning of the shooting phase.
Right.
So
more shooting.
So it's like, okay, well, that makes sense where it is there. Whereas Sigmar is like, start of the turn, hero phase, do all your things. It's like, I'm not in range to cast my spells, though. Move in range. Well, now they're in range to charge me.
Yep.
Oh, if your spell is 12-inch range, useless then. 6-inch range, even more useless. Because I'm never going to be able to move and then wait a turn to cast a 6-inch range spell. Right. So I hope they do the same thing in Sigmar, just because it's like, maybe some things you need to remain stationary for in order to do it, and that acts like a phase, or something. Like,
I don't know.
I'm going to go a little bold here, and I just thought of this. But other games do this. I almost wish more superpowered things like that, which they can be, were a once per game. And like, there's people in 40k in particular who like their spammable things.
Yeah.
We heard people who argued they wish a unit cost 1 or 2 points less per model and didn't have a gun, just so they were cheaper, and they could put more of them to take objectives.
Yeah.
They wish they didn't have units limits of 3 of a type of unit. They wish they could just spam 12 of the same thing. And I am okay with powers being the same. If you have this really powerful ability, I almost wish they were a little more like feat turns, where it's like, well, you get this one turn where your guy can do a thing. You know, Gaskell's Wog used to be that way.
Yeah.
It was like, once per game he's super, the rest of the game he's a guy. So I don't know. I'd be okay with that, just so that you weren't getting every turn you have the most powerful thing, and because I'm sure we're going to see that still.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's
some psychers going to come out who has a power.
Tigerius is going to come out,
so good,
and he's going to be able to shoot mine bullets every single shooting phase.
Right,
and it's going to be so reliable to get off because he's going to have a +4 to cast it.
Right,
so it's basically just a shooting gun.
Yep,
another gun that he has.
Wounds.
It does more wounds.
Yep,
and all of a sudden his 120 point cost is like, well, he should be with like 240 because he's just more wounding everything to death, and he can't be targeted because he's a character and whatever. Yeah, I'm sure it'll be like that, but we'll see. You could do that anyway already.
Yeah. But I'll be interested to see what their idea of our units are going to be more role specific is. Because again, that eliminates some spamming when it's like, well, I need to punch armor, but I also need to take objectives. Well, I also need to buff my backline. Well, I also need to...
I need to have mobility. I need to be able to... Yeah, it's all this kind of stuff. I mean, it might... at least for a little while, it'll feel like Pioneer. You know?
Okay.
It'll be a little bit like exploring to find what works in this new edition for a little bit.
I hope so.
And I do like that about a new edition.
Yep.
When it's not solved. You don't know what the best army is and the best list is.
And the way they tried to keep things from being solved was having a new codex come out every few weeks. I don't know if that's the right way to do it.
Right.
I would rather it's like this, where everyone's on this new rules slate, this new way to play, and every unit is scaled back maybe in their punch, but they've got a role, and now you have to figure out how important that role is.
Right.
So.
And what other people are going to bring to figure out how much of that role you need to bring in general, and then still be able to accomplish your missions. And yeah, I like this Wild West kind of era in a game.
And no, I don't
like
think it'll be dumbed down at all.
No.
In fact, I think some of this will seem overwhelming.
I think it's going to be super complicated at first, because it's different and new. You know, like it's different from what we're used to.
That said,
there'll be new things that people will forget to do in the movement phase, because it's like, oh shit, that's what I need to use my power.
Yeah.
Oh, I missed my psychic gun in the shooting phase. Crap.
Or you're still thinking of how it used to play. Or,
right.
Yeah, I can see that. And we can say there's some things they pulled from Age of Sigmar, I think, because that's just where rules seem to.
It's like a test bed a little bit.
Done right, kind of.
Or they do something different, or they try something out there because it's not 40k. You can test it over here, and they like it, and then they're like, "Yeah, let's implement that."
Yeah, and I think there's something we should implement too here soon, because I'm feeling ready to explore new grounds. Mm-hmm. I could go for a burrito.
Yeah, it's good.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed. Check out our new episodes every Friday on Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Audible, or on Podbean. You can also follow myself and Llama on Instagram for more. We are at Hyena Paints Minis and at Llama Paints Minis. And as always, we'll catch you next time.